Peace. Welcome to another episode of Sex on Shuffle. I am your host, Cindy Lee, your succulent sexologist, here with the teachable moments so that you can live your best life and stay ready. This is part two of my conversation with Dr. Erika Evans-Weaver. Please check out the pod notes if you're looking out for her and her magic. And as I've mentioned before, if you enjoy this episode, take a screenshot. Let me know what you think. Tag me at Cindy Lee Alves on Instagram. And now on to part two. All right, but Tura Widener, what shifted for not porn? When did the not porn happen? Was it at Widener?
I really still wanted to focus on porn. I was like, oh, that still would be fun. But then I went through any number of iterations because, well, by the time I got to Widener, that's the thing about Widener is you get there and then you're like, well, fuck, there are already people doing that. I don't need to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So there were enough people that either were porn stars or, were directors or, like writers or, whatever, that I was like, well, then I don't need to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went from that to really wanting to focus on family therapy for trans and non-binary folks, because I really wanted to help their families, their parents primarily, learn to embrace them, because at that point in practice, I had gotten my license, and whenever there were trans and non-binary people, those clients would get transferred to me. So I was really interested in working with their parents, who often were like, fix them. For queer youth too. I was like, this is not, I can't do that. So I transferred to wanting to do that. And then that stopped because I met enough trans and non-binary therapists who that was their focus. And I felt like, I don't want it to take away from your space. So I can provide support, but that's not where I should center myself.
Yeah.
So I stopped centering that as my focus and just wanted to provide support. And then, it took me a minute to curate who it is that I work with now. And who I work with now, I'm like, yes,
clear.
This is who I am here for. And so when I thought about who I wanted to be as a clinician, I wanted to work with women of color primarily, who hold at least one other marginalized identity. So queer, or trans, or non-monogamous, or kinky, or like that was really what I large part of my practice. But people who come to me have at least one marginalized identity. And that makes me happy. When I thought about outside of therapy, what I wanted to do, you got Frasier. Frasier was a childhood dream for sure. Being able to sit on the radio and, play, what is it? Dear Abby with people. Sounded kind of interesting. And it's interesting because I also remember kind of wanting to do intimacy director work before the name for intimacy director work.
When they needed it. They need it now.
They need it now. But I was like, somebody should be on these sets, kind of help people navigate this stuff. There's got to be a way. I remember wanting to do that. I think at the end of the day, I want to do a little bit of it all.
Mm-hmm.
At the like when I am retired, I want no rock to be left unturned
Mm.
because I would like to have done at least a little bit of it because variety is the spice of life.
Mm-hmm. I bet. Right? Just a little. I mean, it's good because you don't want to have any, you're curious. You have a curiosity, you want to explore. And no shade, maybe the competitiveness has got you to be very clear that you're pretty good at everything you try. So like, oh, let's try this. Oh no, that's new. Let's do this.
Maybe. I mean, I never thought about it like that. I won't even lie.
I'm like, because it there's a both and, right? Like some of that is, yes, I'm exhausted and I have to relearn to take care of myself and my inner child.
right.
And the benefit is I did get this expertise or this yearning for knowledge and yearning for helping in this with this fervor, right? Like
Right.
it's not just a check. It's not, and it's cool if it's just a check for you, like, but for you, there's a connection to your clarity and to your purpose.
It's
Right.
to the world, right? Like
Mm.
how I want to move in the world and
Mhm.
where I want, like, I used to, folks would say, why do you teach? I'm like, because I love teaching. Because if I can't have my hand in all the places, I can at least know that I've educated people who have their hand in all over the places,
Mhm.
right? Like it's the 5 degrees of separation, but I'm okay with that
Right.
because somewhere in it, I've made an impact on making things better.
Right.
That's all I want to do is make things better.
Right. And we
So
have lots of spaces that need a little bit more.
just a little bit. I can't do it all, and I know I'm not going to do it all beautifully. But if I can just make things just a smidge better, then I can go, okay,
Right.
take it over, run with it, and do even better.
Right. Action, contribution, like what can I do? All right, cool. Even if it's not taking a lead in it, right? Like how can I be a
Right.
part of this? Cool. All right. Now I'm going to move to this way. So what professionally and personally brings you joy right now? Or have you been able to fuse them in ways that you can get your joy and pleasure in your business or in your professional space?
I love seeing my clients.
Mm.
I'm still adjunct teaching.
Okay.
It was the full time that was going to be the death of me, but being able to do it part time, I can do. And if I could just sit and write this fucking book and get it done, like because I do enjoy writing it. It is fun. It's fun to think back. It's fun to weave in reality with fiction. Like it's fun. And it's one of those things that I think can help. I mean, my vision for it is clear as day. Like it
Mm.
could not be clearer. I want it to be a book club kind of book,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like it's not that I'm trying to make a bunch of movies. I mean, great. If somebody wants to say, oh, this would be a fun Netflix and chill kind of film. Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
But I really want it to be uh, a book club kind of book. I want it to be a book that um, book club participants almost put like a brown coat cover over because they're like,
Mm-hmm.
"Ooh, this is so steamy,"
Yeah.
but I kind of want to do it and go like, "I'd like to try this." Nope, don't want to do that. Oh, this sounds kind of interesting. How do I have that conversation? Right? Like, I want it to be a better, more informed version of 50 Shades.
Mm. If it was accurate. So having it be as accurate and saucy that we can have educational moments in there and make it sexy and steamy or whatever
Right.
feelings you're trying to have.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So if I had time to do that, that would be great. And then honestly, so much of my time, I'm like, so we have 20 more years, maybe 45. No, not even 20. more like 10 to 15 more years where I actively want to be working. And then I want to take all of the damn seashells that I have gathered through the years and,
Right.
make something with it. I want to make glass and blah, 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 and live on the
Right.
beach.
Right. Do some retreats here or there.
Yep.
Have some wellness workshops at your bed and
For
breakfast.
therapists.
Right.
Not even for the population.
Okay.
I want to work the retreats. I would like my retreats to focus on either self-care and wellness for the practitioner
Mm-hmm.
or well, no, that is it. Self-care and wellness for the practitioner, because in that is also ethics, and in that is also processing your clients, right?
Absolutely.
Like it's all of those things. But I really would like to focus on the practitioner. I used to want to do like mother-daughter retreats. No. Somebody else can take that baton and go with it. I want to help the practitioner to be a better practitioner.
I feel like that's such an important distinction to have, because especially in my experience of sexuality professionals or helping healing professionals, they're like, I want everybody, or I can see everyone. When people ask what's your ideal, your niche, they're like, oh, everybody. And I'm sure you can, and you have, right? Like I'm sure in your repertoire, you've worked with all types of folks, but to be clear and know, like, this is who I want to help. This feels good for me. This is still connected to community. These are people that are going in and helping people in their way, that back to that 5, those degrees of separation.
Right. And that's a whole ethical issue, in my opinion, because when we say we can work with everybody, that's a lie.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's just a lie. I know that I cannot work with everybody. And when I do consultations with people purely so I can hear what is bringing you to therapy. And if it does not fit within my wheelhouse of what I feel like I am good at doing, I'm going to say, I don't know if I'm your best option. Let me brainstorm some other people who I think could better serve you than I could. And to me, it's not a blow on me,
right?
And it's not blowing the gravity of their problem. It's just a reality that that's not where I have focused and honed my professional energies. So why would I lie to you and say that I could do it?
Just to have a client. Right.
Like I'm not I tell my clients and I remind myself, I am not made for everybody. I'm just not. And that's okay. I don't have to be for everybody.
That's so important, because some folks will stay with their clients because they're like, I need a client, or I don't want to leave them. But you're doing a disservice if you're not giving someone that's going to be in alignment and have their needs met.
Absolutely.
Word. You are a gift. Now, this might be a 2-parter. Do you still want to talk about Candyman? Because I do. Oh, but we gotta see. It's been like 45 minutes.
I know. I'm like, let's at least spend a few minutes talking about Candyman, because it was so damn good.
Okay. So now we're gonna talk about Candyman, because we've talked about you've given me a good nugget of your life. Like, some folks are gonna be like, "Oh, I never knew," because I know some of your students. So this is good. But whoever knows you knows that you love horror.
They should.
From the beginning. Like, I don't even know how soon, but I know from once I met you, that was like, oh, you have a whole room dedicated to your memorabilia. You can't
walk in my office and not see my horror posters, right? Like, that's just silly.
So we were talking about Candyman.
Yes.
And now I finally saw it this week. You saw it when it first came out, because you don't play.
I don't play. I've been waiting for a year.
Did you brush up? Because I brushed up and saw the 3 before.
Okay.
I didn't need to see 3 again, and I forgot about that.
You did not need to see 3 again.
My gosh. The 90s were a very interesting time for film.
It was.
So what was this Candyman giving you? Did you enjoy it as a horror person? Did you feel
Yeah,
like it stayed
I loved
true?
it. I
Mm-hmm.
loved it so much. So I only went back. I own all three,
Mm.
but I only went back and watched part one because I knew it
Mm-hmm.
was supposed to be a companion to that.
Yeah.
And I went into it very nervous because, again, it's been over a year, and I was like, "Oh, God, I've been waiting. I've been excited. Y'all are going to really piss me off, and I'm going to be so sad." But I could not have been happier with it. I could not be happier with how much more pronounced the
Mm-hmm.
racial element was. Like,
Oh
it
my
was
gosh.
absolutely present in part one. Like, there were the underlyings of it, and certainly if you had an ounce of awareness,
Right.
it it pops out to you. But there were, bits of dialogue in there. But this was in your face, like, do you understand what this character is about? Like, at the core, do
Mm-hmm.
you understand that this is a film about um not revenge, but retaliation and redemption? Like, do you
Mm.
understand? Um yeah, I loved it so much. I couldn't even stand it.
I'm interested to see if folks like the differences because generationally, right? Like there's some things that I feel like if you did not watch the first one or rewatch it before, you might have missed out. If you just came as this is Candyman, new generation, I'm just gonna start here because you could have. Um,
You could as its own film for sure.
but it had distinct pieces. Like as soon as I saw, because I don't care. This is gonna be a spoiler. I'll put a disclosure in front of this. Like
Yeah,
we can talk about the things. As soon as I saw that the his name was Anthony, right? Like
right,
I was like, oh, is that the baby, my G? Like it's because I didn't
right.
want to read anything. I heard, but
No,
I didn't
no.
want to read anything.
I was like, it's the because I didn't either. I didn't read.
Yeah.
But I was like, oh my God, we're picking it up from the baby. Oh, y'all are playing with my emotions right now. Y'all are playing. You better follow through. You better follow through. Right. Yeah.
And I was excited, but then I was, same thing with you, like very like, what are they gonna do with this? I know who's involved and I have a little bit of more hope, but how are you gonna do this, Cabrini
Animated
Green?
components of it, the animated components were like, so did you wait even during the
Yes.
credits? And like
Yes.
you just it was oh
I appreciated the way that they animated it. I forgot what that's called, the way they did it, because they even used it for the more traumatic pieces. Like, we don't
yes,
need any more
I
trauma.
no, and that I was like, that is brilliant
Mm-hmm.
because I am personally very frustrated with the amount of traumatic black horror,
Yeah.
right, that is out here. And I know that it resonates for some people. I
Right.
get it. It's just I don't watch horror for that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I don't need who I am to be victimized, any more in really painful ways.
Mm-hmm.
So I really appreciated the recognition, like you have to put this into the story, but we don't have to re-traumatize you and give you such strong explicit images that are so painful already. We
Mm-hmm.
know the stories, we can do it in this way that is still super tasteful, but lets you know what this is about. Like it was beautifully crafted.
Mm-hmm. And hella powerful. Like the way that you saw the generations of Candymen get up.
Yes. I was like, y'all are doing things. Y'all are doing things.
And it makes me think that there's a lot of room for us to see more, right? Like there's ways that we can have this come up again if they wanted to. Like they can make a part two. They can talk about maybe a different lineage or follow her to New York if she decides to go to New York, right? Like there's especially if now we have this understanding that this consciousness exists and there's multiple iterations of
Yeah,
Candyman.
absolutely. I know. I'm so excited about it.
Yeah, because I was nervous because I'm like, Cabrini Green doesn't exist. What are we doing? How are we doing this? Is it going to be in like a gentrified apartment? And I was like,
Right.
oh wait, it is. But it was okay. It was
But I wasn't mad at it, right? Because it's the ghost that haunts those gentrified areas.
right.
You know, like the reality is their blood is in that cement. It is in that soil. So you can build whatever luxury apartment you want, but trust that their spirit is still there.
Mm-hmm. And I was wondering what happened with the guy that he met that worked at that ran the laundromat. Like how he ended up being like a follower of it or somebody. I don't know how did that land for you? Like, I'm like, is this one of these of like, yes, we're following him. We want him to come back. Like one of the other iterations. I think the third one had like some
Right.
followers.
Right. I mean, I think it depends on how you look at the story, right? I mean, through the lens of um, this is a way to stand up and have your voice heard, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
somebody has to do this work, and the power of fear, right? Using fear as a tool for change. Um, sure.
Mm-hmm.
I got it. I It's not that I found it unfortunate. I think I love that actor, so I was like, I wish it would have been somebody else. But
Yeah.
I wasn't mad at it. It didn't. I wasn't upset about it for sure. I appreciate it because you do. I feel like you do want these stories to live on, and you want the horror to be told.
Mm-hmm.
You want the not the depravity, the reality of the story shared, the truth shared.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes in order for that to happen, bad things have to occur.
And I appreciate how more and more we're seeing horror or we're seeing movies in general, I think that show that it's not a good versus evil, right? Like there's these both sides that can exist. And
Mhm.
Candyman was a scary thing that I don't even fuck around in front of a mirror and try.
Listen, that weekend, and there were fucking mirrors everywhere. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, why? I don't want to look in this mirror. I don't want
Right.
to look at that one. Like I was very, very cautious as I walked around that suite that weekend.
Mm-hmm.
But it isn't always about good and evil. And that's what I mean. Like sometimes in order for the story to be told accurately and true, like sometimes it feels bad, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't make the situation bad. It means that it's not coming out maybe in the most ideal fashion, but the way it happened was even worse. So here we are, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
it's not a simple, none of these things are simple stories, and none of these situations are simple because life is far more complex. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what I think it shows is the complexity of it all and the characters that are a part of that, right? What role do you play in keeping the story going?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And how the story can shift just a little, because even within the movie, how there was different iterations of like, no, Helen burned alive, or no, she's
Right,
saved, right? Like the
right,
different,
right.
like telephone.
Absolutely.
But I did appreciate that the mother from the previous was still in it, and she still had her slice mark from when
Yep.
she got chopped.
Yep.
So like they did those things that I was like, okay, you're in alignment.
Williams is so phenomenal.
Look, and I think I get so mad. That's a whole other conversation. But every time she's in something and you look on Google, they'll have her photo and then they'll have Vanessa Williams, like light skinned Vanessa, the
Oh
singer
my God,
Vanessa
it makes me
Williams.
so angry.
And I'm like, Vanessa Williams is in this? Like, the singer is in
Oh
this
yeah,
too? Like,
is it? No, no, no. She's so underrated, and yet
absolutely.
she's so fucking awesome. I love her.
Yeah,
Love.
she's dope. So in terms of her son, And that relationship dynamic, what did you think about it?
I mean, talk
Taboo.
about, right. Talk about the choices that parents make to not always give the family history. I mean, isn't that the how many Black families
Mm-hmm.
maintain secrets because that's what you're supposed to do?
I
I
gotta
mean,
protect you from it, and to the point that you think you're from the South Side, and that shaped your identity. And what does
right,
that mean now that you're like, I wasn't even from there?
right. I was like, oh, that's so real and so unhealthy, right? Like, who you are is who you are. You can't paint a different package to make it. Progress and growth happens when the lights are on, not when
Mm.
you're living in darkness. So yeah, I was like, oh girl, this is truly coming to bite you in your ass. Oh
Mm-hmm.
man.
And you tried to protect, and what happened? Like,
Right.
it's still what came, still you couldn't protect from that. You couldn't
No.
protect him from the
Or you
connection.
have had you told it years ago
Mm.
rather than right. Like that's what I mean. Not having the conversation doesn't stop the outcome, right?
Right.
Having the conversation is what changes the outcome.
Mm-hmm. Because we don't know what I was thinking about that too. Like when he was a baby in the first one, we don't know what happened. So we don't know how there was a connection or what
Right,
happened when he got stung by the bee. Like if
right,
there was something involved. It
right,
reminded me of Sleeping Beauty, right? Like we don't know what
right.
Candyman did initially. Like he might have propped him up for this moment.
He had that baby for a hot minute. I don't know
Right.
what he said to him. I don't know
Right.
what kind of incantation.
Right.
We have none of that information.
So then, now what about his relationship, Anthony's relationship to his lover, Brianna?
I have a tough time. Like she wasn't believing in any of this. Ma'am, now that is my only part that I'm like, you don't fuck around with Black people in this kind of way. Like when he said it from the door, I have a tough time. Was she Creole? What was her ethnic heritage?
I don't remember. I don't remember. I
I
gotta
remember
look.
at one point she was speaking French.
She was speaking French on the phone,
She
but
was, but
you're
I
right.
don't know. I don't know. So I'm like, I have a tough time believing that, and this was not in your worldview, and you
Hmm.
had no reservations, or you weren't like, no, we're not bringing this shit into my house. Like,
That's what was wild to me because at the same time, at towards the end, when she opened that basement door, she was like, nah. Right? Like so she knew enough to not do that.
hey,
Hey y'all, I wanted to poke my head in and give a really quick shout out to Aaron Brown and Marty Green Eyes for being my first members on my Buy Me a Coffee page. If you want to join them and become a member yourself, or simply want to send me a love offering, check out www.buymeacoffee.com/shimmies, SHIMMIES. Take a look at the tiers, see what works best for you. And regardless, you as a listener, you checking out Buy Me a Coffee, you sharing it, I thank you. I thank you for supporting. Thank you for this energetic exchange. And may the money you spend return to you times 10.
there was a genuine confusion with that.
There was confusion. And
There was a bit of a confusion.
something that popped up for me also was the dynamic, just them as a couple, and the fact that he was seen as this struggling artist, but she too was in art and wasn't seen in that same way. So like how her brother was very like, you're taking care of this dude.
Well, yeah, because it seemed like she was the curator, right? And she
Mm-hmm.
came from a more distinguished art
The
family.
class piece.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So I felt like this was a class economic disparity
Mm.
happening,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like she had been set up in this world already versus this emerging artist,
Mm-hmm.
which, that again plays out very, very honestly in real life. So
Mm-hmm.
in all the ways, in all racial dynamics, right? So that I felt was more realistic than her not having said, no, this is not the
Right.
case.
Right. In the horror sense, what the fuck was that? And then in the relational sense, I thought that was interesting because, and then on the flip side, that social capital piece, because nobody was really giving a shit about his art until that happened at the gallery. Then
Right.
it went from you helping him to now everybody wants you as the curator because of his art.
As the facilitator to get to him. I know.
It was a lot. It was a lot of layers. I was watching and paying attention to, like, oh, this piece, the layers of the siblings, the siblinghood.
The sibling relationship was a lot of fun. Yeah.
Within a horror.
Within a horror. I felt, oh God, it was so good. I felt like it was the closest thing comparable to Get Out, right? Where it was a drama that had horror underpinnings.
I feel like that's showing up more and more now to put the social emotional pieces and the nuance in that, and it's not just flat out Friday the 13th.
There was this movie that I watched on Shudder. Let me see if I can find the name of it real quick. But it was really a romance that happened to have horror underpinnings underneath it. And it was like it was a slow movie. And like the dialogue was great. It was a movie about heartbreak. Like it was really very good. The name of the movie is called After Midnight.
So it was a horror, but it was a romance.
It's a horror movie, but about this guy who lives out. I mean, it's not a Black horror film, but it's a horror movie about this guy who lives out in the woods, like in a rural area, who clearly got abandoned by his girlfriend after a number of years. You're questioning, like, are you battling yourself? Like, is this the monster that lives within? Did your girlfriend ever really exist? Like, you're going through all of these hypothetical situations. Nobody believes him because nobody else has seen the monster. It's not going to anybody else's house.
Right.
But it's really a drama that also happens to have this horror element to it. And I'm finding a bit of an uptick in that kind of film. And I think when they are able to be done in such masterful ways, I think one, it can bring in a whole new set of horror fans.
Yeah.
But it also shows the sophistication of horror films. It's not just about a slasher, or it's not just an exorcism. And when I say just, be clear, I love a good exorcism. Right? Give me a good slasher and I am happy as hell. But to show a little bit more maturity in how the story can be told, I think it's nice to see that emerging in this field of horror.
It gives you more to play with, because I've always told you, if you ever feel like doing a class on like horror films and sexuality, like I'll even hire you. Like we can make this happen.
We could. I mean, that would be fun. For sure. I thought about it. I actually, when I was driving here today, I was like, what is something that because I had passed Mount Airy Learning Tree, and they are doing classes again. And I had the thought, like, oh, I do want to do that film series where we get to talk about and dissect and like tease out what does this mean for us as citizens.
Yeah.
All of that. So I'll put it back on the think tank.
Think about it. So in this think, I'm gonna put it out there. Off the top, if you could think of some movies that you would like to talk about, either because they're your favorite horror or because they sexuality messages just pop out on you, right? or both.
Mhm.
What would be some that you would recommend or you would want to talk about in a class like that?
So these are definitely not my favorite horror,
Mm.
um, but there are horror movies that pop out with sex. I think, well, I definitely think of like original Friday the 13th, right?
Mm.
Like I think you have to do that era of horror. You have to at least pick one or
Mhm.
two, whether it's like Slumber Party Massacre, Friday the 13th. Like you have to do something in that period of time. Rocky Horror Picture, obviously always
Mhm.
fun, but lots connected to it. Contracted
Mm.
is a
I
great
forgot.
one, right? Like you can't that's just such a fascinating film in all the ways. Obviously It Follows, you
Mm,
know,
yes.
another big one for sex and horror.
That's good then. Then what's your favorite? And then we'll close with some of your favorites so people know what your taste is. If anybody wants to give love offerings,
Oh
or
yes.
right,
Give me movie suggestions because
like
Sunday horror is
tradition.
that's tradition. So my favorites, I can always go back to the classics, right?
Mm.
Your Bela Lugosi, Christopher Lee, offerings are always great. Your Universal monsters, really. But I'm a
Mhm.
vampire person, right? Like I
Mm.
love vampires more than I love werewolves, and more than I love mummies. Um, The Conjuring is always gets me in my heart and in
Yeah.
my feels. Um, Dracula, always a good one. But I mean, it depends on my mood, right? Because if I'm feeling carefree and summery, I can watch Lost Boys on a loop, right?
Mm.
Or I can watch um the Dracula with Keanu Reeves, right?
Oh
Like,
yes. Uh-huh.
always so good. Um, if The Exorcism of Emily Rose is there was just one that I watched that I was like, oh, this The Changeling is a great,
Mm-hmm.
ghost story. Halloween is one that I can watch all day long, but the
Yes.
original, not Rob Zombie,
Yeah.
to be
Okay. That's
clear.
fair. There's a
That's
new one coming out.
I'm gonna watch it.
Yes.
I'm never gonna walk away from it. And then obviously, oh, that's another one for sexuality and horror would be Hellraiser.
Mm. I mean, as a young child, that was one of my favorite sex scenes. Like I would watch it for that. I don't know why. That's something we could unpack later,
We
but
can
I
unpack that at a
remember.
different time, but I feel you and I feel the same way. Uh, this feels tawdry and sort of, that man has pins in it. I'm feeling all the things.
Put it on again. Put that shit on again.
Loved it. Loved it. So, yeah, that would probably be my arc. It's paranormal, um, paranormal and vampires are probably like my go-to.
Mm.
I can do zombies, but I have to be one in the mood for zombies. Like obviously, huge Walking Dead fan.
Mm.
Train to Busan, right?
Oh.
Like 28 Days Later. Like I love all of them,
Mm-hmm.
but I will also readily admit that they get my mind into, oh shit, I'm not going to survive if this happens, right? Like I'm
I
not.
just got a water bob and a passport.
Having some soup. That's all I got.
These are my options.
What are we gonna do? So I got to be in the right frame of mind for it. Um, but yeah, paranormal and vampires, I will always watch.
So that's good. So now we know if you got some good across international, she loves international films. If
Yeah.
you got some recommendations, some French, some Japanese horror,
Oh, yes.
holler.
All the French.
And then, all right. So then for the folks that are listening, how are ways that folks can either work or connect with you, or what magic are you offering to the world that you're not,
Email
keeping for
me.
yourself? Okay.
I'm like, email me, Dr. Erika, MFT@gmail.
Okay.
I am terrible with reaching out. We all know I suck with social media. At some point, I'm going to hire somebody who can do social media stuff for me. I don't like it. Even when I try it, I'm like, oh, this didn't feel right. And all of my clients are like, can you please do better on your social media? I'm like, why are you even on my social media? You are already my client. I just need you out here in the world. I just need you more.
That's fair. I understand that. And I also understand that you can be successful and live your best life and not have to do all these particular things that people say you got to do.
Right. Well, and I also respectfully remind them, you know that if I catch on, my rates go up. So I think you need to leave me the hell alone. So there's that.
That's
too.
fair. That's fair. That's fair. Look, you need to be paid the value, right? We need to.
Right.
Price goes up. That's okay. That's good to know. So then if we get you a social media manager, price goes up so you can pay them equitably. I hear that.
Oh, it is.
That's all it is.
Staff and pay me. It's just not going to work.
No, we have to be realistic and sustainable. Sustainable.
It is about sustainability.
So I'm going to put your website and your email.
Yes.
And I am so grateful for you.
Thank you for spending this time with me.
I have so much to say that I'm like, we'll wait, because I feel like you'll be on again. There's so many things we can talk about. Malignant comes out today.
I love a tangent.
I'm like, we'll get back to these. We might even have one. Let's see. Let me know what you think about Malignant. I might watch that today.
Because I'm going to watch that tomorrow night. So yes, because I'm waiting. Evan is excited to watch that. So we're going to have a date night tomorrow night.
I want to see how he feels about it. What's his take?
Check this. My man loves some James Wan.
Really? Come on. Preference?
Insidious is his jam.
Yeah.
He loves that movie. I feel like I raised you right. Like, I feel like my job is done.
You did it. Feel proud.
He can rock his kitty lightsaber t-shirt and watch Insidious. We're good.
And make snacks, because he'll make them.
Make delicious snacks.
Come on. He's ready. The Renaissance. Come on. Let's start now. Let's do it. Hey, thank you so much for listening. Head on over to www.cindyleealves.com for podcast notes or any updates where you'll find me. And have the day that you need. Shimmies.